want to make sure we say welcome to everyone that is here. I want to make sure that we ask you, if you are visiting, hang around a little bit. Let us get to know you. Let us get to love on you. And if you are new to the area, let us meet you and invite you back a couple of times. And if you are not visiting, but we haven't seen you in a while, we are so glad you're here. It's a sick and traveling time of year. And it seems like this time of year we just lose people for weeks on end, and then we get them back, and it's a celebration every time. I would have been in that particular boat for last week as well, because I think I told you guys our family had a bug run through our house. But we're glad that everyone's here this morning. Thankful that we're able to sing together like we have this morning. Thankful for all the men who have served. We're going to talk this morning about two things, and we're going to start with sugar. It's the holidays. You know what I was realizing, actually? Our culture has now come up with an excuse to eat copious amounts of sugar like every day of the week. You know what I'm saying? We don't really do this thing where it's like, I've noticed it because I have kids, because as an adult, I don't think about that as much, right? I'm hardened. I can eat my sugar. So, but as you have kids, they are impacted by sugar a lot, and I've noticed it's just Halloween. That was not that long ago, and then it was just the holidays, and then it'll just be New Year's, and then it'll just be, what's after that in February? Valentine's. You see, you all know. You know the excuses to eat a bunch of sugar. Then it'll just be, I don't know, Easter, and then it'll just be summer. Just let them do what they want. I mean, it'll just be a good reason to eat sugar at any point. I've noticed, and we've developed this cycle of sugar consumption. The bad news, right? The bad news, we all know this. It's not great for us, okay? It's not great for us. Here's the deal. Sugar does 6 things. It does 6 things to us really well, okay? The first thing that sugar does is it draws you in. Like, as soon as I said the word sugar, I heard groans of enjoyment from everyone here, all right? You know what I'm talking about. When we have a meal over here in the fellowship building, we eat, where do you look first? Be honest. As the food is getting set out, every adult man for sure does this, walks in and sneaks a cookie before the meal. You got to get your pre-meal snack. All the kids, wherever they congregate, they hover right around that dessert table. Desserts are beautiful, all right? Do you realize that there are cooking shows solely dedicated to the look of a dessert? Like, they make baking shows, right? Cake-offs. And it doesn't matter what the cake tastes like at all. No one cares. They just want to know what it looks like, because honestly, desserts are beautiful. My mom was telling me earlier this week she made a pie that she did not care to eat at all. It's just a beautiful pie, and she wanted to make it and have it for Thanksgiving because it was beautiful. Sugar, it does that. It draws you in, man. Nothing says, welcome to my office, like what? A bowl of candy, right? And when there's a bowl of candy, I know some people here will take more than one. So sugar is brilliant at drawing you in. It really is an inviting thing to see a dessert or to see sweets. You want to go towards the thing that has sweets. So the second thing sugar does, though, is after you've been drawn in and you devour in an unholy way the amount of sugar that makes you sick, you crash. Have we all heard of a sugar crash? Yeah, sugar, it can give you a rush of energy. I remember one time Ryan and I were moving. Of course, Ryan has a moving company. I worked for him for like 10 years almost, I think. And when I was moving with him one day, we had a particularly long move. The load up was like a 6 or 7 hour load up. And so we didn't stop to eat in the middle of that. And the lady had some candy that she offered us. And I remember Ryan grabbing a pack of Smarties and eating the whole thing in one bite and saying, sugar energy. And I was like, 6 hours in, I'm on that. Give me some sugar energy, right? And it legitimately helped get through the pack up to lunch, because sugar really can give you a burst of energy. And then just as quickly as it brings you up, it drops you back down, doesn't it? We're all hardened sugar eaters at this point, but you can see it in kids a lot better. Kids will have some sugar. My son actually just had a lollipop. It's so funny. Just had a lollipop today in service. And I don't know if you saw him, but he was sitting in Courtney's lap doing this, shaking back and forth. He's bouncing. He's actually bouncing. It was hilarious and beautiful. So, but yeah, sugar can jack you up, and then it can make you crash. You come down off of a sugar rush, and you feel terrible. Courtney was telling me about when she was little once. She had eaten, they were in New York with her family, and she had gotten a Coke float, and no one checked the size of the Coke float, and, ice cream and Coke. She ate the whole thing, and she said she was up that night until like 11 o'clock humming, and she kept feeling these shocks go through her body. She's like, I remember it kind of hurt, and it was kind of fun, but I couldn't sleep. I mean, listen, sugar can have you crash, and when you crash from sugar, it hurts. It's not fun. Number 3, sugar can make you unhealthy/fat. This is a fun fact about sugar, isn't it? It is actually not good for you at all. When you eat a lot of sugar, particularly a specific kind of sugar, I want to clarify, we're getting scientific here. There is a kind of sugar called fructose. It's the really refined, really processed sugar that you don't really find in nature very much. It's more so just sweetener for us that we like a lot in America. Your body doesn't know what to do with it. There's normal sugar that is natural and often surrounded with fiber that you eat, and the fiber helps your body break it down, and it's useful. Then there's fructose, which is everything else we eat, and that goes into your body, and your body's like, well, that's not good for anything, and we can't really break it down very well, and so it says, stick it over there, call it fat. That's what your body does with fructose. Isn't that fascinating? Doesn't that make you want to eat pie? Anyway, so your body is literally not made to break down this type of substance. It's not built for it. It's a foreign substance almost. And so having large amounts of it can actually make you unhealthy, and it's not good for you. 4th, sugar decreases your desire for healthier foods. Have you guys done this before where you are snacking on something and then you're not full, but you don't want to eat the meal? You just kind of want to keep snacking on whatever it was. I do this a lot when I'm feeding my kids because I will feed them good food and not want to make another meal for myself. And so I'll have a couple snacks while they're eating or while I'm making their food. And then I catch myself like, I don't really want to eat a whole meal. I don't really want to eat food that's good for me. And guess where I turn? To a granola bar. That's basically candy. So, our granola bars are basically candy. They're covered in chocolate. Anyway, so eating sugar actually decreases your appetite for healthier foods. They've seen this with studies on rats as well. Another thing that they've done with rats to test them and the effects of sugar is they've given rats a test where this is bizarre, but they will get the rats addicted to a drug of some sort, usually a pretty strong one, and then they will give them the option between the sugar, water, and the drug, water, and the rats will break their addiction to the drug to have the sugar, which is fascinating. They've done all the brain scans and fun stuff on that, which is it's a really interesting deal, but it tells us the 5th thing about sugar, and that is it keeps you coming back. Like, have you heard the old Lay's potato chip? You can't have just one, right? Well, that's kind of my, mantra with all desserts, isn't it? Isn't it yours too? Like, you have one slice of pie? No. One piece of candy? No. My kids don't even believe me when I say that, listen, sugar keeps you coming back. When you have some, it not only makes you not want the things that are good for you, it intensifies your desire for it. Sugar keeps you coming back over and over again, similar to the rats who became more addicted to sugar water than they did the water with a drug that they were previously addicted to. Number 6, sugar is not satisfying. At the end of the day, sugar is never enough. I'm sure we've done this before as well, where you are snacking or eating, or you have maybe a little bit too much dessert, and in 20 minutes you realize you're hungry. Have you done this before where you have something sweet and you're like, oh, that'll hold me over, but you experience maybe the sugar crash, or you realize that really wasn't sustaining. It didn't actually fill me up. I'm still hungry. I need more. I'm not satisfied. That is sugar. Sugar is not a substance that is sustaining in a way that many others are. It is a substance that is never satisfying enough. It doesn't fill you up. Now, those are 6 things that sugar does. It draws you in, it makes you crash, it causes you to be unhealthy because your body is not built for the amount of it, certainly, that we eat on a regular basis. It decreases your desire for healthier things, it keeps you coming back, and it is never enough. All right. Now, that was 10 minutes and 22 seconds of science class. Why did we do it, right? Let me tell you very clearly, we did not spend all that time talking about sugar to make everyone feel guilty for what they just did a couple of days ago, okay? That was not the point, all right? And it shouldn't make you feel guilty for what you're going to do in a couple more days when Christmas rolls around, or New Year's, or Valentine's Day, or Easter, or summer, or next Halloween. I mean, listen, not the point, okay? The point is, if we can understand how sugar affects your body, it will actually help us understand how sin affects your soul. There are a lot of parallels I learned between the way these two foreign substances can impact us. So we're going to go through and we're going to look at these 6 things as they relate to sin. So number 1, just like sugar draws you in, sin draws you in. Look at 1 John chapter 2. 1 John chapter 2, a verse I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with, even if we didn't know exactly where it was. 1 John chapter 2, John is writing about the love of the world. He starts in verse 15. He says, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, and the pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. So the world, it draws you in. Like there is an element of sin that is enticing. There is something about sin, whatever particular sin may be for different people, it draws you in. There is if it didn't, there wouldn't be a temptation behind it. And so sin has a quality to it that draws you to it. It makes you desire it. You think about Eve in Genesis 3, when she and the serpent were going back and forth. Notice there were a couple of different things that happened as their conversation went on. Obviously, Satan, he twisted God's words. He added a couple of important words. He changed what the expectation was. He, as we mentioned, attacked the relationship that God and man had. And at the end, Eve's desire shifted. Right? She saw the fruit, that it was pleasing to the eye. It looked good. And that it was desirable to make one wise. Eve looked at the sin and said, not gonna lie, looks pretty good. And that was the temptation that led her down that path, because sin draws you in. You think about any example in the Old Testament where someone is faced with a choice. The choice of sin, if they end up making it, was something that they desired. It's something that drew them in. Look at Proverbs chapter 23. There's a really great example of this in Proverbs 23. And skip down to let's go with verse 31. Well, let's back up. Let's start in verse 29. It says, who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has complaining? Who has wounds without cause? Who has redness of eye? Those who tarry long over wine. Those who go to try mixed wine. Do not look at the wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup and goes down smoothly. Solomon here, talking about alcohol, talking about how enticing it can be. It's sparkly. Don't you know glitter makes people happy? sparkly. It shines. It grabs your attention. It swirls in the cup, and it goes down smoothly. It looks really good. That's what he's telling them. Be careful. Don't look at it because it looks really good. Listen, sin has this quality to it, similar with any number of sins that we would encounter in our world today. There is an attractiveness to being dishonest because you could advance your career. There is an attractiveness to doing what you want to do because you want to do it. Sin draws you in, just like sugar draws you in. Number two, sin ultimately makes you crash. What I mean by this is that sin has short-term consequences, right? Sin has immediate consequences often associated with it. But stick right here in Proverbs chapter 23. Look at verse 29. It says, like we read, who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has striving? Who has complaining? Who has wounds without a cause? And who has redness of eyes? I don't know about you, but I'm 0 for 6 on that. I want nothing to do with Proverbs 23 and verse 29. None of that sounds good. And yet the answer is, the person who has that is those who tarry long over mixed wine, those who will go to try mixed wine. The idea here is simply that this is not something that leaves you in a better place than it found you. It's a sin that can hurt you. Look at verse 32. In the end, it bites like a serpent and stings like an adder. The idea here, and of course this is just an example that Solomon is using of alcohol, but the idea here is that alcohol has a danger to it. It has a danger to it that can leave you worse than it found you. It has immediate consequences in many cases, and certainly in our world today, we see a lot of the danger and the damage that the sin of alcohol can cause. So not only does sin draw you in, but sin can make you crash. It can leave you with consequences then and now. Certainly when we think about someone losing their temper, the sin of anger, there are long-term consequences that come from that kind of explosion, but there's also short-term consequences that come in the middle of a fight, aren't there? There's the immediate conversation. There's the, we're going to have to get past this before we can smile at each other again. There is the apology that may or may not be coming. There are a number of different things that can come as a result of sin in the moment, short-term consequences. Look at Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 25. Hebrews 11. $11:25. By faith, back up to verse 24. By faith, Moses, when he was grown up, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to be mistreated with the people of God than to enjoy the fleeting pleasures of sin. The idea here, this is the Hebrew writer talking in a much larger context, but this description of sin as being a fleeting pleasure, well, that's true because sin draws you in and it looks good. And there is some pleasure that comes with sin. We can be truthful. It wouldn't be a temptation if there wasn't some pleasure that was a result of sin. But they're fleeting. They leave. They're gone really quick. And the result, the crash, is much worse than the pleasures ever could have been. Number 3, sin makes you unhealthy. Sin makes you spiritually unhealthy. Not only does sin draw you in and make you crash, have short-term consequences, but it also has long-term consequences as well. Look at, I wanted to mention that just like your body is not built for sugar, certain types of sugar, your body is not built to handle that much or that kind. Your soul is not built for sin. When God created man in the garden, he didn't create him a sinner. He created him very good, actually, is what he says. Man and woman were very good. And he put him in the garden without sin. And he put him in the garden in a relationship with him in a special, special way. And they were not meant to go do what they did. And that is still the truth today. Look at what Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 1 Corinthians chapter 6, Paul is talking about sexual immorality, and he's dealing with a problem that the church in Corinth had as it pertains to this. And in verse 12, he is quoting something that they would say about themselves. All things are lawful for me. And then he answers it, but not all things are helpful. And then he quotes them again. All things are lawful for me. And he answers, but I will not be dominated by anything. Now he's quoting them again. Food is meant for the stomach, and the stomach is meant for food. And now he's answering, and God will destroy both one and the other. The body is not meant for sexual immorality, but for the Lord, and the Lord for the body. Which is a beautiful way for Paul to end that argument, isn't it? Your body is not meant for this kind of sin. Your body is not meant to have sin in it. In fact, what does Paul say your body is meant for? Your body is meant for the Lord, and the Lord for your body. You are meant to be in a relationship with God that is intimate and special. You are not meant to be in a relationship with sin that is intimate. This is the idea here from Paul. We are not built to handle sin. In fact, it kills us. You think about what Peter says in 1 Peter chapter 2. He describes sin as waging war against your soul. Right? 1 Peter chapter 2 and verse 11, he says, "Beloved, I urge you as sojourners and exiles, abstain from the passions of the flesh which wage war against your soul." I don't know about you, the older I've gotten, the harder it is for me to watch real war movies. I don't know exactly, I still watch them and can enjoy them and can find beautiful things in the art, but there's just something about it that didn't bother me when I was younger and bothers me now when I'm older. That these groups of people can send massive groups of people to go kill massive groups of, that is not a beautiful thing. It's actually a very, very ugly thing. And you think about all the things that are involved in war, the killing and the hatred and the villainizing of the other side and the lack of empathy and the lack of love and all the things that go into it. It is an ugly, ugly, ugly thing. That is how Peter describes sin. That war, that is what Peter describes sin doing to you. It wages war against your soul. You think about the long-term effects that war can have on people. There are people who come back from war and their bodies are not ever the same, whether they've lost limbs or had other damage done. Their bodies are never the same. Their mind is also never the same. PTSD is a crippling disorder for many people who've experienced time in active combat. And it can render a person never the same. You think about the families of those who've come back from war, maybe the families of those who didn't come back from war. You think about all of what war does, and then think, that is what sin is doing to our soul. Which means, it's a sobering thought, but sin could render our soul never the same. That's a serious thought that we need to have on our mind when we think about sin. Sin can make you spiritually unhealthy. And number 4, sin can decrease your desire for godly living. Sin can cause you not to want the good stuff. Just like sugar can decrease your desire for healthier things, sin decreases your desire for godlier living. You think about, we're going to look at 2 quick examples here, but think about Judas and the way that he betrayed Jesus. We talked a little bit about this in class, but he may or may not have known what was going to happen as a result of what he did. You think about Judas's life and how he went through interacting with Jesus. He watched the guy heal the blind, make lame walk. He watched him pass through crowds. There's some details in the Gospels where Jesus passed through them when they were about to stone him. He watched him escape death a number of different times. He watched him heal a dead person. He could literally heal someone who was dead. And Judas, to me, it's a reasonable thought. I could make $1 off of this, right? The Messiah is not going to lose to the Pharisees. In fact, maybe if we get them in the same room together, they'll get on the same side. So he goes to the Pharisees, and he betrays Jesus, and he gets some silver. I don't know what Judas was really thinking as he decided to betray Jesus. But you know what happened when he realized what he'd done? In Matthew chapter 27, it says that Judas went and hung himself. He was so overcome with guilt. He was so overwhelmed with devastation of what had happened that he went and he chose to end his own life as a result of his sin. He should have turned to Jesus. Think about what Peter did when Peter denied Jesus 3 times. Said, I don't even know the guy. No, I've never been with him. With cursing, the Bible specifies. Said, I don't know who you're talking about. Leave me alone. Overcome with devastation, riddled with guilt, Peter turned back to Jesus and had an opportunity at the end of the story to affirm him and affirm his love for him just as many times as he chose to deny him. When we allow sin in our life, when we commit sins, it can have us feeling the same way. It can have us feeling the same way that Judas felt, riddled with guilt. I know that there have been times in my life when I start this vicious cycle of I've sinned, I should pray, I don't want to pray, I feel guilty, I don't deserve to come talk to God for this, I just did it, it was too bad. I know that there are others I've talked to who said, I've sinned too big, God could never forgive me, and then that will keep them from turning back to God. And truthfully, what this is sin allowing you to decrease your desire for healthy living, for a healthy and godly life. Because the answer is never to turn away from God, but instead to turn back to him like David after his sin with Bathsheba. After David committed adultery with Bathsheba, arranged a murder for her husband, and then took Bathsheba as a wife, he was confronted with his sin, and he wrote Psalm 51. And his words in Psalm 51 are, take not your Holy Spirit from me. Restore unto me the joy of your salvation. Create in me a clean heart, O God. David turned back to God. He didn't allow the guilt to overcome him. He didn't allow a sinful action to turn him down a path of sin and destruction, but he chose to turn back to God, which is what we've got to do when we are faced with our sins as well. Number 5, just like sugar keeps you coming back, it doesn't just decrease your desire for good things, it increases your desire for it. Sin does the same. Sin keeps you coming back. The easiest example to see with this is the people of Israel. Israel was delivered from slavery through the 10 plagues, marched on dry ground through the Red Sea, camped out at the base of a mountain that was trembling. What'd that look like? Not sure. Had to be incredible. And as Moses went up the mountain to talk to the God who just delivered them, they decided, we want an idol. That may very well be the first time that Israel ever decided consciously to worship an idol instead of God. It happens in Exodus chapter 32. They choose to worship an idol. They have Aaron melt down all of their jewelry into a golden calf, and they worship the golden calf, and they say, this is our God who brought us out of Egypt, which is insane when you read it. And Moses comes down off the mountain and gets irate, smashes the 10 Commandments, goes and burns the golden calf, grinds it into a powder, puts it in the water, and makes everyone drink it. I mean, it's insane. Like, this is a Bible story, you know? So this is what Moses does. The people have now committed a very serious sin. They broke the first of the 10 Commandments. You'll have no other gods before me, right? And they did it while he was giving the 10 Commandments. And then you think, okay, well, they had to drink ground up powder water. They probably won't ever do that again. Wrong. Literally, the entire story of Israel is just them waffling between God or idols, God or idols. They do it with all of the judges. Over and over again, the judges come and deliver them. They worship idols. They get taken into captivity. The judges deliver them. They worship idols. It's the cycle. Then you get to the time of the kings. You remember what Elijah said before his duel on Mount Carmel? He said, how long are you guys going to waffle between two opinions? Either God is God and serve him, or Baal is God and serve him. And then they have the showdown, and guess what? God is God. So listen, this one sin that Israel decided to commit at the base of Mount Sinai at the beginning of their nation stayed with them for literally the rest of their time as a nation. They struggled with idolatry all the way through their time as a nation until they weren't hardly known as Israel anymore, right? They struggled with idolatry all the way through the time of the judges and the prophets and the kings, and it was an issue that kept coming back, and it kept them coming back to it. It kept them coming back to worshiping idols over and over and over again for literally hundreds of years. Sin can keep you coming back. Not just the addictive sins, but all sin has a quality to it that it will keep you coming back much longer than you meant to. Number 6, sin does not satisfy. Sin, it will always leave you wanting more. We read in 1 John, look back at 1 John chapter 2. After he gets done describing the desires of the flesh, it says, and the world, in verse 17, is passing away along with its desires. But whoever does the will of God abides forever. Now listen, this stuff won't last. All the things that we want, all the sins we could entangle ourselves in, all the desires and the pleasure that is associated with those desires, that they're going to fade away. Solomon gets done with his life, writes a book, and says, nothing matters at all. Everything is pointless. Except for God. That's all that matters. Amen. And so when we think about sin and trying to fill our life with things that are sinful, at the end of the day, anything that takes God's place can be sinful, and anything that isn't God is going to leave us empty. And that's the truth as it pertains to sin. Sin is a lot like sugar. So I guess the conclusion today is, if we go on a diet to get rid of sugar, then we need to go on a diet to get rid of sin, but only for 90 days, then we can have it back. Listen, we need to get this thing out of our life. I want to say something, too, before we finish. And I'm just going to be really honest with you. I don't know how to say this as well as I want to. I've wrestled with it for a long time, and I want to say it well and clearly, and I don't think I'm gonna. So if you misunderstand, please talk to me later. I'm probably not saying what you're upset about, okay? Here's the deal. We do not stop sinning so that we can go to heaven. That is not the reason that we stop sinning. If it was up to us to stop sinning in order to get to heaven, we'd be doomed. We'd be doomed. That's not the point, right? In fact, God sent Jesus for that reason. Like, God sent Jesus to wash our sins away, to give us grace when we make mistakes, and to save us from our sins because we couldn't do it ourselves. And unless there is a time in our life when we get to a perfect living, I used to think you'd get around 65 or 70, and then you just quit sinning altogether. All right? Unless we get to that point in our life, we're still going to need grace. And so the point is not stop sinning, get to that perfect part of your life, and then you're good and you get to go to heaven. That is not the point. So then why do we stop sinning? Okay, because it's incredibly damaging to you. It's horrible for you. It damages your life in a number of different ways. Some that you see right when it happens, some later on when you have to deal with it, some later on when you didn't even realize you were going to have to deal with it. It's horrible for your life. Jesus said, I came that you may have life and have it abundantly. John 10:10. He wants us to have a beautiful life now and forever. You also stop sinning because it's damaging to those who are around you. Your sins don't just affect you, they can affect your whole family. I know that whether Courtney or I are having a bad day, it impacts our entire home, right? I know that when someone chooses to drink and drive and gets in an accident, that doesn't just affect him or the person who was driving. It affects the person that they hit, and it affects the family of the person that they hit. And I know that when someone chooses to engage in sexual immorality outside of their marriage, that doesn't just hurt them, it hurts their spouse and hurts whoever else is associated with that. You stop sinning because it's terrible for you. It's like God's been telling that to us from the beginning of time. You weren't built for this. Why do we stop sinning? Well, we stop sinning because it is so dangerous that it can keep us from going to heaven, even with grace. Now, let me be very clear. Sin is a very serious thing, and God's grace is just as serious, if not more so. God's grace can cover anything. It can cover anything. He sent Jesus, who was a perfect sacrifice, to cleanse us from our sins. He wants to forgive us of everything. But sin is so damaging and so serious that it can turn you away from God's grace. That doesn't mean sin is more powerful than God's grace. Of course not. But it can turn you away from God's grace. Sin can cause you so much damage in your life that it can make you choose to leave God. So listen, we don't stop sinning so that we can go to heaven. It's not up to us. It's not our job. It's our job to strive every day to stop sinning because it's terrible for us and because we want to go to heaven. But God's grace, that's what takes care of our sins. And thank God for that grace. So that's where we're going to leave the lesson this morning. If you need to partake in God's grace through baptism and have your sins washed away, then you can do that this morning. And if you need help with any problem that you're having, whether it's sin or any other issue that's going on in your life, whatever you need, Christians are here this morning who are ready to help you. Just let us know what you need while we stand and sing.